The world is loud, and it has always been loud, but there are seasons when the noise becomes almost unbearable. Voices everywhere, demanding your attention, demanding your loyalty, demanding your emotions. Everyone has an opinion about who you are, who you should be, what you should chase, what you should fear, and what you must display to be considered worthy. And most people, without even realizing it, have surrendered themselves to this noise. They wake up and immediately listen. They move through the day reacting. They fall asleep exhausted, not from meaningful labor, but from mental chaos. And then they wonder why they are weak, why they are unstable, why they cannot stand firm when the winds begin to blow. You are not created to live like that. You were not designed to be pulled apart by every voice that shouts your name. You were not formed to explain yourself to everyone who demands an answer. There is a deep poverty in the soul of a person who is always speaking, always defending, always reacting. Silence has become rare, and because of that, clarity has become rare. When you refuse silence, you refuse examination. When you refuse examination, you refuse growth. And so year after year passes, and you remain the same, just older, just more tired, just more bitter. Look carefully at your life. Not at the life you present to others, not at the image you curate, but the life you actually live when no one is watching. Look at how easily your focus is stolen. A word spoken about you, a post written against you, a comparison that cuts your heart, and suddenly your direction is lost. You are moving forward, but now you are spinning in circles. You are building something quietly, but now you are shouting explanations into the void. And the tragedy is not that others misunderstand you. The tragedy is that you allow their misunderstanding to govern your peace. There is a discipline that few are willing to embrace, and it is the discipline of turning inward with brutal honesty, not the kind of self-focus that worships the ego, but the kind that strips it bare. To sit alone with your thoughts, with your motives, with your fears, and not run away. To stop talking long enough to hear what is actually happening inside you. Many people are afraid of silence because silence exposes them. It reveals how shallow their convictions are. It reveals how much of their identity depends on applause. It reveals how little substance there is beneath the performance. If you are going to grow, truly grow, you must accept that most of your battles will not be fought in public. They will be fought in private, where no one claps, where no one affirms you, where no one even knows what you are enduring. This is where focus is forged. Focus is not the result of motivation. It is the result of elimination. You remove distractions. You remove unnecessary voices. You remove the need to be seen. And when you do this, something painful happens at first. You feel invisible, and that is exactly where transformation begins. The world trains you to speak quickly and think shallowly. It rewards outrage and punishes restraint. It tells you that if you are silent, you are weak, and if you are loud, you are powerful. But look closely at those who cannot be silent. They are restless, they are anxious, they are constantly shifting their position because they have no solid ground beneath them. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strength under control. Silence is the ability to stand firm without needing to announce that you are standing. There is a reason why disciplined people are often misunderstood. They do not explain their process. They do not broadcast their struggles. They do not argue with every critic. They are too busy working. While others are busy narrating their lives, disciplined people are building theirs. While others are consumed with being right, disciplined people are concerned with being faithful to the task before them. Focus on yourself does not mean indulgence. It does not mean obsession with comfort or pleasure. It means responsibility. It means acknowledging that no one else is accountable for your character. No one else will answer for your laziness, your pride, your bitterness, or your wasted potential. You can blame systems, people, circumstances, or timing, but in the end, the mirror does not lie. And the sooner you learn to confront that mirror in silence, the sooner you will begin to change. Most people want change without conviction. They want growth without discomfort. They want the fruit without the root. But life does not work that way. If you are serious about becoming something more than you are now, you must accept obscurity. You must accept seasons where no one notices your effort. You must accept being misunderstood and not correcting the misunderstanding. This will feel like death to the ego, and that is precisely why it is necessary. There is something deeply wrong with a generation that feels compelled to announce every intention before it has proven anything. Plans spoken too early often die young. Discipline thrives in quiet. Consistency grows in secrecy. When you speak less, you conserve energy. When you conserve energy, you can direct it with precision. Focus is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters without distraction. Examine how much of your mental energy is wasted on things you cannot control. Opinions, rumors, trends, the approval of people who do not know you, and the disapproval of people who never will. You replay conversations in your mind that are already over. You argue with imaginary opponents. You rehearse defenses for accusations that may never come, and all the while the work you were meant to do remains undone. This is not harmless. This is destructive. Silence breaks this cycle. Silence forces you to live in reality instead of reaction. It teaches you to respond instead of react. Reaction is emotional and impulsive. Response is thoughtful and deliberate. Reaction is born from insecurity. Response is born from conviction. When you are silent, you create space between stimulus and action, and in that space, wisdom can grow. You must also understand that not every truth needs to be spoken, and not every battle needs to be fought. Discernment is knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. Many people speak not because it is necessary, but because they are uncomfortable with being misunderstood. But being misunderstood is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Being shallow is worse. Being unfocused is worse. Living a life of noise with no substance is far worse. There will be moments when you are falsely accused, misrepresented, or ignored. Your instinct will be to defend yourself, to correct the narrative, to make sure everyone knows your side. Resist that instinct. Ask yourself whether your defense will actually change anything meaningful, or whether it will simply satisfy your pride for a moment. Often, the most powerful response is to continue doing what is right without saying a word. Focus requires humility because it requires admitting that you cannot do everything. You cannot please everyone. You cannot chase every opportunity. You must choose, and every choice is also a rejection. When you choose to focus on your growth, you reject distraction. When you choose silence, you reject validation. This will cost you. It will cost you relationships that were built on noise rather than depth. It will cost you attention. It will cost you comfort. But what you gain is something far more valuable: integrity. Integrity is formed when your private life aligns with your values. And alignment cannot happen when your life is constantly on display. You need time away from the gaze of others to wrestle with who you are becoming. You need moments where the only witness to your effort is your own conscience. This is where strength is cultivated. Do not confuse isolation with loneliness. Isolation can be chosen and fruitful. Loneliness is the absence of meaning. When you step back from the noise to focus on yourself, you are not withdrawing from life. You are preparing for it. You are sharpening the tool before using it. You are strengthening the foundation before building higher. There is a maturity that comes when you stop needing to announce your pain. Pain can teach you, but only if you listen. If you constantly speak about it, you turn it into a performance. Silence allows pain to do its work. It refines you, it humbles you, it reveals what truly matters. Those who rush to speak often miss the lesson entirely. You must decide what kind of person you want to be when no one is watching, not in theory, but in practice. What habits will you cultivate? What disciplines will you commit to? What distractions will you eliminate? These decisions will shape your future far more than any public declaration ever could, and they must be made in silence, without applause, without guarantees. The coming days will tempt you to react quickly. Information will come faster than wisdom. Pressure will come before clarity. If you do not anchor yourself in focus and restraint, you will be swept away. But if you learn to be still, to observe, to think deeply, you will see what others miss. You will move when others panic. You will endure when others quit. This is not about becoming indifferent or cold. It is about becoming grounded. A grounded person is not easily shaken. They do not rise or fall with every opinion. They are not desperate for recognition. They know what they are working toward, and they are willing to work quietly for a long time to get there. Ask yourself how much of your speech is truly necessary, how much of it builds, and how much of it merely releases tension. Many words are spoken not to communicate truth, but to soothe anxiety. When you learn to carry anxiety without broadcasting it, you become stronger. When you learn to hold your convictions without shouting them, you become dangerous in the best sense of the word. There is a depth that can only be reached through restraint. Shallow waters are noisy. Deep waters are still. If you want depth in your thinking, depth in your character, depth in your impact, you must be willing to descend into stillness. This will feel uncomfortable at first because you have been conditioned to equate noise with life. But real life often grows in hidden places. Do not measure your progress by how visible it is. Measure it by how stable you are under pressure. Measure it by how little you need to prove yourself. Measure it by how faithfully you do what must be done even when no one is impressed. These are the signs of a focused life. There will be people who interpret your silence as weakness, arrogance, or indifference. Let them. You cannot control their interpretation, and trying to will only entangle you again in the very noise you are trying to escape. Your responsibility is not to manage opinions, but to steward your life. Focus demands sacrifice. You will have to say no to things that are good in order to say yes to what is essential. You will have to disappoint people. You will have to walk away from conversations that drain you. This is not selfishness. It is stewardship. A scattered mind cannot produce a disciplined life. When you strip away the noise, you begin to see yourself more clearly. And what you see may disturb you. You may realize how inconsistent you have been, how much time you have wasted, how often you have chosen comfort over growth. Do not run from this realization. Let it humble you. Let it drive you to change. Silence is not meant to condemn you, but to confront you. Growth is slow, and it is often invisible. That is why impatient people abandon it. They want immediate results, immediate recognition, immediate transformation. But lasting change does not announce itself. It creeps in quietly, reshaping habits, thoughts, and desires over time. If you stay focused, if you remain silent when you are tempted to perform, you will look back and realize that you have become someone stronger than you ever imagined. The world does not need more voices, it needs more substance. It does not need more reactions, it needs more resolve, and that resolve will not be formed in the spotlight. It will be formed in the quiet decisions you make every day when no one is there to reward you. So withdraw from the unnecessary. Guard your attention fiercely. Speak less, but live more deliberately. Let your work speak. Let your discipline speak. Let your consistency speak. And when the time comes to act, you will not need to announce it, because the weight of who you have become will already be evident in the way you stand, in the way you endure, and in the way you move forward without needing permission, without needing applause, without needing to explain yourself to a world that is too busy talking to listen. Silence is strength, not weakness, though the world will insist on teaching you the opposite. From an early age, you are trained to speak quickly, to respond immediately, to defend yourself at every turn, to make sure your voice is heard above all others. You are told that if you do not speak, you will be forgotten, overlooked, dismissed. And so people talk endlessly. They explain themselves, justify themselves, advertise themselves, expose every thought and emotion, as if visibility itself were proof of worth. Yet beneath all this noise there is a quiet truth that few are willing to face. Most speech is driven by insecurity, and most silence is avoided because it demands strength. To remain silent when you could speak requires control. It requires the mastery of impulse, the refusal to be ruled by emotion. Weakness reacts immediately. Weakness cannot endure misunderstanding. Weakness panics when it is not seen or affirmed. Strength, on the other hand, can wait. It can endure tension without releasing it through words. It can bear the discomfort of being misjudged without scrambling to correct the narrative. Silence is not the absence of power. It is power held in reserve. Consider how often people speak simply to relieve internal pressure. Anger rises, so words are thrown like weapons. Fear emerges, so explanations are offered prematurely. Pride is wounded, so defenses are constructed loudly and publicly. None of this is strength. This is emotional leakage. A strong person can feel deeply without being controlled by what they feel. Silence allows emotion to pass through without being given authority. It creates a pause where wisdom can intervene. Silence also exposes intention. When you speak, you can hide behind language. You can sound confident while being hollow. You can appear knowledgeable while lacking depth. But when you are silent, all that remains is who you actually are. Your discipline, your consistency, your actions become visible. This is terrifying to many people because words are easier than work, and explanations are easier than endurance. Silence removes the mask. There is a particular kind of strength required to be silent when accused unjustly. Everything in you will want to correct the lie, to protect your image, to make sure others know the truth. But silence asks a hard question. Is your identity so fragile that it depends on immediate public approval? Or is it rooted deeply enough that you can trust time and integrity to reveal what words cannot? Weakness demands instant vindication. Strength is willing to wait. Silence trains you to listen, and listening is one of the most underestimated forms of power. When you are silent, you notice patterns others miss. You hear motives beneath words. You observe reactions, insecurities, and contradictions. Loud people reveal themselves constantly, while silent people gather understanding. This understanding becomes leverage, not for manipulation, but for discernment. You begin to know when to speak, and when silence will do more work than words ever could. In silence, pride starves. Pride needs an audience. It needs affirmation and recognition. When you remove speech, you remove one of pride's favorite feeding grounds. You are forced to confront whether you would still do what is right if no one ever acknowledged it. This is where strength is forged. Anyone can act virtuously when praised. Few can remain faithful when unnoticed. Silence also protects you from unnecessary battles. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every insult requires a rebuttal. Not every misunderstanding needs clarification. Weakness feels obligated to engage with everything. Strength knows how to choose its battles. By remaining silent, you conserve energy, emotional and mental, for what truly matters. You stop bleeding yourself dry over things that add no value to your life. There is a depth that forms in silent people that loud people rarely achieve. Depth requires time, reflection, and patience. It requires sitting with uncomfortable thoughts without immediately externalizing them. Silence forces you to wrestle internally before you speak externally, and often, in that internal wrestling, you realize that what you were about to say did not need to be said at all. Silence humbles you because it reminds you that you are not the center of everything. You are not required to have an opinion on every issue. You are not obligated to respond to every provocation. You are not responsible for managing how everyone perceives you. Weakness feels the burden of omnipresence. Strength understands limits. There is also a moral dimension to silence. Words have power, and careless words destroy. They damage relationships, reputations, and trust. A strong person respects this power and does not use words recklessly. Silence becomes an act of responsibility. It is the recognition that once words are released, they cannot be retrieved. Weakness speaks first and regrets later. Strength considers the weight of speech before opening the mouth. Silence is especially powerful in moments of provocation. When someone tries to draw you into conflict, silence denies them control. It refuses to give them what they want, a reaction. This does not mean silence is passive. It is active restraint. It is choosing not to be governed by another person's behavior. This kind of silence communicates more authority than shouting ever could. In a world addicted to expression, silence becomes an act of rebellion. It declares that you will not be owned by trends, outrage, or emotional contagion. It says that your inner life is not public property. This boundary is strength. Weakness exposes everything and then wonders why it feels empty and invaded. Silence also deepens self-knowledge. When you stop talking, you start hearing your own thoughts more clearly. You become aware of your fears, your motivations, your inconsistencies. This can be uncomfortable, even painful, but it is necessary. Strength is not ignorance of self. It is honest awareness of self. Silence provides the space for that honesty. Many people fear silence because it confronts them with unresolved guilt, regret, or confusion. They fill their lives with noise to avoid facing these things. But avoidance is not strength, it is delay. Silence forces confrontation, and confrontation is the beginning of change. A person who can sit silently with their flaws without collapsing is a person who can grow. Silence also cultivates patience. When you do not speak immediately, you allow situations to unfold. You allow more information to emerge. You allow emotions to settle. Impatience speaks quickly and often wrongly. Patience waits, observes, and responds accurately. Patience is strength under discipline. There is an authority that comes from measured speech. When someone speaks rarely but thoughtfully, their words carry weight. When someone speaks constantly, their words become background noise. Silence gives value to speech. Weakness talks so much that it devalues its own voice. Silence is strength because it aligns you with reality instead of illusion. Illusion thrives in talk, in speculation, in assumption. Reality reveals itself slowly, often quietly. When you are silent, you become attentive to what is actually happening rather than what you fear might happen or hope will happen. Silence also teaches endurance. There will be seasons when you are overlooked, misunderstood, or undervalued. Talking will not fix these seasons. Complaining will not shorten them. Silence teaches you to endure without becoming bitter. Endurance is one of the clearest signs of strength. A silent person learns to act without announcing intention. This protects purpose. Many plans fail not because they are bad, but because they are exposed too early. Silence shields what is fragile until it becomes strong enough to stand on its own. Weakness seeks validation before substance. Strength builds substance first. Silence is strength because it frees you from the addiction to approval. Approval is intoxicating and enslaving. It makes you dependent on external affirmation. Silence breaks that dependency. It forces you to derive stability from within, from conviction rather than applause. There is a quiet confidence that grows in silence, not arrogance, not superiority, but steadiness. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop measuring your worth by reactions. You begin to trust the process of becoming rather than the performance of being seen. This confidence cannot be shaken easily because it is not built on opinion. Silence does not mean you never speak. It means when you do speak, it is intentional, it is truthful, it is necessary. Strength is not muteness, it is restraint. The strongest words are often spoken after long silence, when clarity has replaced impulse. Ultimately, silence is strength because it places you in control of yourself, and self-control is one of the highest forms of power a human being can possess. A person who can govern their tongue can govern their actions. A person who can restrain speech can restrain desire, and a person who can restrain desire can live deliberately rather than reactively.